Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Jimmy Conway. I'm meeting with you today to discuss some aspects about nutrition and what is healthy. I'm a 68-year-old retired orthopedic surgeon, which really should have no bearing in my ability to speak about nutrition, since doctors really aren't taught nutrition. But due to some personal problems that occurred, I became very attuned to nutrition science. And so I'd like to talk to you a little bit about kind of the pathway I found to becoming more healthy. As I stated, I'm 68 years old. I grew up in southern Oklahoma. And if you know anything about Oklahoma, the southern part of Oklahoma is the South. So our food centered around meat, and it was usually fried. My mother was a really good cook, and she always called me a gut worshiper. And so I guess I always had a real affinity to food. Now, as an aside, I'm going to talk a little bit about addiction. And so hopefully, if there's anybody in the audience that is in the recovery movement, that you'll recognize some of the similarities between what I'm going to speak about and what is talked about in the recovery fields. It's my belief that a lot of our hunger is driven by a food addiction. And I'll use myself as the prime example of that. So when I grew up, I was literally afraid of being hungry, because if I got hungry, I became ill. And by ill, I mean I developed essentially what would be referred to today as a pediatric migraine. So back as far as I can remember, if I got hungry, I got to the point where I got physically nauseated and would start vomiting and have a horrible headache. And essentially it would become a pediatric migraine. And so that drove my fear of hunger, and probably drove me to overeat, although I was never obese until I got to be into my 40s. I was always probably active enough that I burned off a lot of that excess calories that I was eating, because I was the epitome of ADHD. And a lot of orthopedic surgeons, as an aside, that I know would qualify as being ADHD as a kid. And so that drove me to be acutely aware of my hunger status at all times. And it got so bad that I would carry food in the trunk of my car, because there weren't enough fast food restaurants around Oklahoma City to handle my hunger. And it got to the point where in 2009, I woke up one morning in August of 2009, and I had the strangest left hand feeling. You know, the joke in medicine is the definition of a double-blind study is two orthopedic surgeons looking at an EKG, and there is a lot of truth to that. I know if there are no squiggly lines, that's bad, but that's about all I know about EKGs. But I realized that I had experienced something I'd never experienced before in my life. Now, I never really have had angina or chest pain, but this was more than likely a variant of that, and it was significant enough that it got my attention. So after that episode, I called a colleague who was a cardiologist and went in to be evaluated. He drew my blood work. My cholesterol was 494, and my triglycerides were 3,295. He said that he'd never seen triglycerides that high, and I told him I was an overachiever. And so we started a cardiac workup. I did a stress test, which I promptly failed. And so I had scheduled an arteriogram. Now, I went into this arteriogram basically more or less brain dead. I was under the impression that I'd go in, have the arteriogram, have a stent or two, no big deal, and be out of there. Well, I had this test done on a Monday, and I vividly recall waking up from the test because the cardiovascular surgeon was standing over my stretcher, and my cardiologist said that he thought my blockages were too great to stent, and that I needed to have a triple bypass. And I was actually scheduled for that triple bypass the coming Friday. So because I went in through my groin to do the arteriogram, they did not want me working the next day. And as such, I had the day off. I used it to great success. The Friday before I had my arteriogram, my wife ran into a colleague of mine. She told him what was going on, and he said, "You need to get him to read this book called The China Study by T. Colin Campbell." And so she brought the book home to me that Friday. And so I am a fast reader. And literally, I read that book that weekend. And it actually made me angry because I'd never heard of information that was contained in this book about the cause of heart disease, and that the cause of heart disease was not as mysterious as we'd been led to believe. You know, I trained under the guidance of what is now referred to as genetic determinism, and that is that the genes determine your outcome. And what we now know is that your genetic makeup can be manipulated by the epigenome. And so you're not necessarily a prisoner of your genetics. And I had kind of grown up under the assumption that I was a prisoner of my genetics, and I had a very, very strong family history of heart disease. My dad came from a large family, and just about everybody died of heart disease. I may have had one uncle die of cancer, but basically heart disease was what ended the life of most of my kinfolk. My maternal and paternal grandparents. And so, you know, I kind of had a fatalistic outlook that heart disease was something that was going to be in my future. And I did very little to lessen the risk of developing heart disease until I was faced with having bypass surgery. So I read this book called the China Study, and mentioned in that book is a book called Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease by Caldwell Esselstyn. And so that Tuesday, when I couldn't work, I got Dr. Esselstyn's book, and I literally read that day. And I called my cardiologist and said, you know, I think I want to try this diet before I have surgery. And you would have thought I said I was going to go out and end my life, because he was freaked out that I was signing my own death certificate. But he reluctantly agreed to still continue as my cardiologist. And so we started from one day eating everything that was basically bad about the standard American diet to eating whole food, plant-based, no added oil, salt, or sugar diet. And I don't recall the first month because I think my body was in total shock. But, you know, within a few weeks, it became kind of the new norm to eat whole food, plant-based. And I'm convinced that the data today are significantly more strong than they were in 2009, that whole food plant-based is the healthiest way for us humans to eat. You know, I've been involved in a lot of the diet wars over the last decade about, you know, is it vegan or whole food plant-based or paleo or low carb, or all these diet wars. And since I retired in December of 2021, I've spent a lot of time researching what is healthy. And I'm convinced the number one driver of our risk of disease is calories, plain and simple. And when you start looking at the neuroscience of eating, the neuroscience of hunger, and what occurs in our brain, and what occurs in our microbiome, I'm utterly amazed that we're able to make food choices, because a lot of our food choices are made non-consciously. So there's a tremendous amount of neuroscience research that's been done on the signaling of the microbiome and also what's known as the metabolome, and its interactions with our brain. And the vast majority of these interactions are non-conscious. And I use that word intentionally. It's not subconscious. Subconscious to me denotes that with some effort, I can bring that up to my consciousness. But these interactions occur on a level that are totally non-conscious. And they're occurring in parts of our brain that our cortex isn't that aware of for the most part. And a lot of times we become aware of our food choices after they've been made. And so a lot of this in terms of healthy eating and healthy living goes a lot with the recovery literature, in that I'm convinced, at least on my personal level, that I've been a food addict my whole life. And, you know, today I realize that. I know that if I have a craving, that doesn't mean I'm deficient in whatever I'm craving. It more than likely means I'm addicted to it. So we've done some hunger experiments where I've actually started embracing fasting. And that was a concept that was totally foreign to me, for being a food addict and being scared of being hungry. To actually contemplate not eating for several days was basically freaked me out. I started down the fasting path with Walter Longo at USC and his fasting mimicking diet. And I remember ordering this kit that was going to feed me for 5 days. And when that arrived, I literally freaked out, because there was 5 days of food in these little bitty boxes, and that's all I was going to eat for 5 days. And I didn't think I could do it. I was scared to death, but I'm incredibly glad that I actually did it, because by doing the fasting mimicking diet, it let me realize that I could fast and still be okay. So, you know, we did seminars on healthy eating until COVID basically took that out. But we were doing monthly seminars with people. We'd have 30 to 40 people, and you're talking in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, which is not known for its healthy eating. But we'd have 30 to 40 people a month at these seminars, because there's a real desire for people to learn what is healthy. And for the most part, we don't know. We get, you know, just pummeled with a lot of beliefs. People believe this is healthy. People believe that's healthy. But what does the science really show? And that's the problem with nutritional science. It's not real hard. A lot of it is not great in terms of scientific rigor, in terms how the studies are set up. And a lot of the research in nutritional studies has been done with a predetermined goal in mind. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any stretch of the imagination, but when large corporations want to prove their product is healthy, they spend vast amounts of money to have the science show what they want it to show. And so gets really difficult to believe what has been published in the peer-reviewed literature on nutrition, because it's all over the board. And I think, a lot of it has to do with our interaction with our brain. There's a book that I read several months ago called The Hungry Brain by Stephen Guyenet. And I'll hold that up. I think everything on the screen is backwards. We can provide links to that. But that goes into the neuroscience of overeating. And, the most I ever weighed was 226 pounds. I'm 5'10". I currently weigh about 160. And so at 5'10" and 226 pounds, I was obese. I didn't, at that point in time in my life, I didn't really consider myself obese. And I didn't really have consideration to what I actually ate. I ate what I wanted to eat at that time. But I had a health issue that caused me to lose about 20 pounds. And so that kind of started my weight loss. And then I weighed about 205 pounds when I had my arteriogram. And so after we decided to embark on this road, we went whole food, plant-based, no added oil, no added salt or sugar. And within about a month, I dropped close to 30 pounds. And I wasn't hungry. I was afraid to be hungry. And so in my fear, I stumbled upon a way to allow me to lose weight and not be hungry. And that is really backed up by this neuroscience of the hungry brain. And this book was published in 2016. So this book was published several years after I'd kind of stumbled upon this method of, I guess you could call it dieting, but not being hungry. And what I did was I had a bag of 2 vegetables, cauliflower and broccoli. Now, I don't crave either one of those substances, but I kept that with me all the time. And every time I felt a little hunger, I would eat either cauliflower or broccoli. And that would assuage my hunger. And little did I know that I was resetting my brain's lipostat. Now, this is an area of the brain that controls body fatness. And the more I learn about this, the more I'm utterly amazed that I was able to lose that weight without being just ravenously hungry. It doesn't matter whether or not you're thin, you're overweight, or you're obese. The moment your body loses fat, your brain does something to subvert that. And it does it by increasing your body's amount of fat that your brain wants you to have. So it's like you're in a catch-22. So you go on a diet, several things immediately happen when you go on a diet. One, your metabolic activity plummets. Your thyroid hormone plummets. Your metabolism craters. And that's your body's way of ensuring that you have enough fat to live and that you have enough fat in your body to reproduce. And so the reason I said that I think our primary problem in America today is too many calories is no question that regardless of which aisle of the low carb, high carb, low fat, high fat aisle you're on, that things dramatically change when you start trying to get healthy. And it's like your body fights that. and it's primarily your brain that's fighting it. It's also your microbiome. That's another area where today I have continually changed my eating, in that now I eat primarily for my microbiome. I want to feed my microbiome as many different varied vegetables as I can, because the vegetables have this nutrient in them that most of us in America are vastly deficient in. And that nutrient is called fiber. And fiber is a complex compound. There's not just one fiber. I think I stumbled on a way to help me lose weight by eating that cauliflower and broccoli, because of the fiber content in it. It started changing my gut microbiome. And gradually over time, I became where I actually would start craving broccoli and cauliflower. I'm convinced now, knowing what I know now, that is the only way I was able to lose the weight and change my biomarkers. So my cholesterol was 494, my triglycerides were 3,295. But we went on this really strict whole food plant-based diet. Within 6 months, my LDL was 115. And at that time, my LDL had fallen to 15. And that was as low as that test could measure. And so I just saw notice of a question, and I'll just answer it right now. I struggle with finding healthy fast food besides salads. And I hate to break this to you, but there are no healthy fast foods besides salads. And the salad, depending on the dressing, may or may not be healthy. Fast food is a fast death. So what I've learned about food, I'll use that as a segue into when we eat food, we see it as either rewarding or satiating. And highly rewarding food is what we're driven to seek. It's like that's our truly addiction button. And if you look at it from, an evolutionary standpoint, it makes total sense that, when we struggled for calories, which we don't struggle today, but for the most part, when we struggled as a population for calories, maintaining body weight and maintaining body fatness was very important to maintaining reproductive health. And it's ironic today that one of the main causes of infertility is obesity, because in our evolutionary past, you couldn't reproduce if you didn't have enough body fat. And matter of fact, you wouldn't even menstruate if you were a female if you didn't have enough body fat, because that ensured that you wouldn't have a baby that you couldn't produce. And so our reproductive capabilities are turned on and off by our body fatness to a point. And so this reward versus satiation, we're driven to seek highly rewarding food. And those are unfortunately what the fast food companies have really zeroed in on. They know this neuroscience of eating. They know that if they add a little bit of sugar to anything, that our brains are going to light up like a firecracker. And that's why sugar is added to virtually everything you eat. It's hard to get a product off the shelf that has been processed and made that doesn't have added sugar, and they have all these different names for these added sugars so that you don't know that you're eating the added sugar, but your brain definitely knows you're eating the added sugar because it loves added sugar. It also loves added fat. And it loves high rewarding food. And it doesn't necessarily love the satiating food because that's not rewarding. But it's been proven the best way to lose weight is to eat a very bland diet. And that blandness, if it meets the correct calorie amount, will cause you to lose weight, but you won't be hungry. But you add rewarding food to that, and you're going to starve. And it's the rewarding food that turns on the hunger. It's my feeling today, it's my belief that a large portion of my personal hunger is a habit. And it's a habit that's been ingrained in me since I was a little kid. You know, we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We may have a snack. But 15,000 years ago, do you think we ate like that? No, we didn't have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We'd be good if we had one meal a day. And so, you know, I have essentially trained myself to not be hungry in the morning. So one of the healthy habits that I've tried to develop in my retirement is exercise. There's no question in my mind that exercise in terms of health is probably just as important as food. And so I think that's a big proponent. So I had another question about what is whole food plant-based. Whole food plant-based, basically the goal is to eat food like your great grandparents would eat. And so if it was a vegetable, you eat the vegetable in its unprocessed form. Now, I do eat a little processed food. I eat tofu, and that is a processed product, but it's minimally processed. And there is so much misinformation about soy and tofu out there that we could do a whole talk on that just alone about all the misinformation that's out there. But a lot of this healthy eating environment has tons of misinformation and tons of inaccurate, purposeful misinformation, in my estimate. And so as we, try to eat healthy, our own brains will sabotage us. So this metabolome, which is the product of your microbiome, can change. So your metabolome changes minute by minute based on a lot of other factors. Let's say I've had a very stressful day, I'm hungry, which increases my hunger. And so I reflexively grab some junk food because it's stressful and I just need something to eat and I'm at the end of my rope. And so I'm just going to eat this way. And I'm not perfect. I do this. And so I don't know anybody that's perfect. The problem in doing that, a lot of times, and this is really true in addiction literature, is when an addict loses his sobriety, a lot of times that is such a momentous event that they don't just go down a little bit. They start back in their addiction at the level in which they were before they ever became sober. And so it is, you automatically go back to your worst level of addiction. And that happens so much with eating. is people will be eating, they eat whole food, plant-based, they feel great, they have a stressful day, something happens, boom, they eat some junk food, and then they're right on this binge of where they're eating junk food all the time. And it is your microbiome and your metabolome, along with your unconscious brain, that drives that behavior. It's almost like these bugs in our intestines say, oh, you gave me some really bad fat, now I need a lot of it. And so that's interacting with your brainstem. And your brainstem is not really telling your cortex that this stuff is going on. And you're going to find yourself totally relapsed. And with food, that means that you've lost the ability then to control healthy eating. And as I say that my hunger is a habit, my food addiction is a habit as well. And I know that's a little different terminology than what's going to be used in the addiction world. And so if you're in recovery, maybe you shouldn't listen to what I'm going to say when I say my food addiction is a choice. And that is, I can choose to eat healthy, and I know the consequences of that. So now I can run these scenarios inside my brain, and I can say, yeah, man, I'm really craving a foot-long chili cheese dog from Sonic. So that was my junk food of choice growing up. That was my drug of choice. Was a foot-long chili cheese coney from Sonic Drive-In. It was the only place where I grew up that was open after 7 p.m. And so that was my drug of choice when it came to unhealthy eating. And, you know, if I allow myself, I can still remember the taste of that food. And so if I really dwell on that, I'll start craving that food. And if I allow myself to crave that food long enough, I'll act on that urge. And so now I know that if I drive by a Sonic and that chili cheese hot dog coney pops into my head, I can play the scenario that, yeah, I eat that, and then I start eating a lot worse food because I'm driven to eat that way. And within a short period of time, I'll be dead. I'll have a heart attack and die. That's my metabolic disease, is heart disease. I mean, you don't, I'm not sure if I ever really told you that when I had my arteriogram, I had an 85% blockage of my left anterior descending, which is called the widowmaker. 80% a little further downstream, and a 70 in my right main coronary. And I already had another artery that was 100% blocked, but it had recollateralized. So I didn't think of that needed to be bypassed. But I had 3 areas of significant blockages that needed to be bypassed. And so, you know, I started that one day of eating healthy. And for the most part, you know, that was 2009. So several years ago. If I had a repeat arteriogram, would I still see levels of blockages in my heart? And the answer is probably yes. Those haven't all resolved. There's a great law of physics that says that the amount of fluid that can go through a tube is proportional to the diameter of that tube to the 4th power. So that means blood vessels don't have to open up very much at all to allow tremendous more blood flow to occur. And so that's Dr. Esselstyn says that he can heart attack proof you in 2 weeks. If you go onto his whole food, plant-based diet, no added salt, sugar, or oil, that the stabilizing effects of doing that then allows the arteries to open up slightly, and then that increases your blood flow to the point that after 2 weeks, angina can be arrested. Now, I had my arteriogram, and then in 6 months, I had a repeat arteriogram. That repeat arteriogram was normal. I'm sorry, not arteriogram. I had a stress test, repeat stress test. I didn't have a repeat arteriogram until a couple of years ago. I had a CT arteriogram because of some issues with COVID. And I did not have significant blockage with that. But I don't doubt that I still have blockages in my body, that not all those reversed. And that I can add to those blockages is if I eat unhealthily. And it doesn't take, periodically I can have whatever I want and I don't worry about it. But we try to eat fairly cleanly. And I'm really, really, really watching my calories, because I think that's the key. If I can maintain my weight, I think I'll maintain my health. And that's the funny thing about adults. So once we reach our adulthood, the average human loses 4 pounds of weight during the summertime. The average, I'm sorry, I got that backwards. The average human loses 2 pounds of weight during the summertime. The average human gains 4 pounds of weight during our winter overfeeding time, which is known as the holiday season. So the average human gains 4 pounds from Thanksgiving through Christmas. And then we lose 2 pounds the rest of the year. That means we gain 2 pounds a year, which is 20 pounds a decade. That's how our fat stat, or what's called the lipostat, is very easy to increase, but it's extremely difficult to decrease the fat stat or the lipostat. And that is an area in your hypothalamus that drives your hunger. And willpower has no bearing on this issue. You cannot willpower your way out of your lipostat, the area of the brain. And what happens is the lipostat actually develops a brain injury. The high fat in our diet injures this little area in the hypothalamus, and that area then causes us to lose control of our hunger, and we become more hungry. And every time we eat to satisfy that hunger, it causes a little further injury to the hypothalamus. And that's why it's theorized that it's really difficult to lower your lipostat, because this injury causes a neuroinflammation. And we know that inflammation is the root cause of all kinds of issues. And certainly in the brain, this neuroinflammation causes us to overeat. And so it's extremely difficult to get our lipostat lowered. And that's why it's very important to control our caloric intake. The other issue is our brains drive us to seek calorically dense food. As I have said, calories are king. Calories are king when it comes to survival. Calories are king when it comes to reproduction. That seems to be what motivates a lot of our behavior. Our neurobiology is driven by that. And then so that's why it's even more important to eat healthy and maintain eating healthy. It's probably also why it's so important to exercise for health, because exercise in and of itself can lower the lipostat. and that's why I say calories are king as well too, because you can change your body composition based on your amount of exercise that you do. So another question that was asked was my thoughts on statins and similar drugs that other doctors push. And I think in their place, statins are very beneficial. There's no question that statins drive type 2 diabetes. There is a big issue with silent muscle damage that then can lead to kidney issues. I took statins early on. I was on Crestor for probably a couple of years. And I'd take them again too. Personally, I think the PCSK9 inhibitors probably might be more beneficial. It's just they're prohibitively expensive right now. And so that's not going to be something that I see widely used. What I see in the future is we will bioengineer this problem to essentially go away, where once we learn the genes that are involved, and then it becomes ethical to have genetic engineering, there'll be another avenue to solve this problem. But right now, I would use everything at my disposal if I was faced with significant disease. So I'd be on a statin, I'd be on a PCSK9 inhibitor, I'd be on one of the weight loss drugs and these aren't silver bullets. I mean, the Wegovy and those classifications of drugs, we're seeing tremendous weight loss. We're seeing some disturbing things as well. Seems to drive pancreatitis risk. It seems to cause an excess loss of muscle mass over fat. And so not only are people losing tons of weight, but unfortunately they're losing more muscle than they are fat. And so unless they're doing something to counteract that, I see that causing more problems down the road. Those drugs have tremendous potential, but right now, I don't think they're the sole answer. So I actually have 5 questions. Oh, maybe I don't know how to work this. There, I see some more. My typical breakfast, lunch, and dinner. My typical breakfast is nothing. So I typically wake up between 6 and 8. That's when I work out. So initially, I want to work out fasted, and that is determined by my goals. So I don't have a goal to be big and bulky. I do have a goal to be strong. Working out fasted causes not as much muscle buildup, but it doesn't really affect the strength that much. So for lunch, I usually have a lunch of some supplements, to be quite honest. I mean, it's fiber and the stuff that's called AG1, but it's a bunch of different fibers I mix up into a drink. And that's typically my lunch. And then supper will be, we usually eat about 5. And that's another, I used to eat at 7. But the science seems to show that if you eat the same food at different times of the day, it causes a different biological response. And so definitely the later you eat, the more unhealthy it is, just in all comers. So we've chosen 5 as our time to eat supper. So we'll eat supper So tonight I'm having quote fried okra that's not fried, it's done in an oven and baked. Black-eyed peas, squash, and kale salad. And that's fairly typical. I need enough calories so that I'm not hungry. And so, I don't really count my calories. I don't really count my protein. I don't necessarily count my fat. I just eat, but I try to eat healthily. And another question I had was the weight loss drugs were dangerous because they cause a boomerang effect. There's no question, no matter what you do to lose weight, whether through drugs or through diet or just solely through exercise, there will be a boomerang effect. There will be a rebound effect. And so you have to keep continually changing things up to mitigate that rebound effect. Your body gets used to stuff. And so it's like exercise. You can't do the same exercise every day and have it work. You'll adapt to it, and pretty soon you won't get the benefit from it. And so if you're taking weight loss drugs to lose weight and you're not doing anything else, as soon as you quit taking the drugs, you're going to gain the weight right back. And that may even be worse for you because that boomerang will again change your body composition to where you'll be even more fat. So your percentage of body fat will be higher. And then every time you go through that cycle, you're likely to have increased body fat. And so, what I try to eat today actually is a lot more in regards to the varied plants. So I just looked at my watch. It's where I am, it's 2:48. So it's getting close to the end of this presentation. Do you want to have other questions at this time?
Dr. Conway, thank you so much for this presentation. My name is Leila Kamuchian. I am the co-chair of the Health and Wellness Committee. I wanted to thank you on behalf of the committee and our colleague, Gary Latorno, who is listening, I understand, and couldn't be here to introduce you. I did have a question, which I put in the chat. I'm not sure if you saw it. My question was, what is your opinion on intermittent fasting, if you haven't touched on it?
I haven't touched on it, and
Okay.
That's a large part of what we do today. Once we started embracing the intermittent fasting, that's when we went, basically I ate one time a day. The stuff I have at lunch is very low calorie, very high fiber. And so I think it makes a big difference. It makes a big difference in how your body responds to different fuels. I don't think I was very good at switching between glucose and fat metabolism when I was so metabolically unhealthy. I'm pretty sure my body couldn't switch. But by, I've gone 8 days without eating food. So I've done an 8-day water fast, which blew my mind, and I wasn't hungry. I started water only fasting a couple of years ago. After doing the fasting mimicking diet, I got to thinking, well, yeah, I can fast. And so I want to fast. So we quit eating at 5:30, maybe 6 o'clock. And so that's going to take a while for that food to metabolize. So by midnight, I'm probably entering a fasted state. And so then I'm in that fasted state, and I want to stay in it until basically noon the next day is what I'm doing now. Now, if I wake up and I'm hungry, I'll eat something. If maybe I worked out too hard the night before and I'm kind of paying the price for it, I'll eat some calories. But that's how I know I'm hungry versus if I'm just craving. Being a food addict, every time I get hungry, I have to say, okay, is that me wanting my drug of choice? Or is that me really hungry? If I can eat some and my hunger abates, I'm pretty sure that was hungry. If I eat something and I'm lusting after something else, now that's my addiction.
That's very fascinating to be able to discern the difference. And I think you would have had to practice for a while to understand that about your body, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, there's no question about that. And I have some knowledge of addiction. I was addicted to tobacco for a long time. And then back in the 90s, I was addicted to opioids for back problems. And I know that addiction. And this is very similar to that. It's not quite the same. So these guys that really do addiction medicine and they really discount the fact that food can be addictive, there's so much similarities. I have to say I disagree. To me, food is as addictive as any substance I have ever taken.
Right. And thank you so much for raising that awareness. I think I'm going to read off two more questions that we have. One was, can you please repeat the name of the book? I believe that you showed, Dr. Ethelston.
Oh, Esselstyn? Esselstyn is Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease.
Okay, we'll put that in the chat. Prevent and
Prevent
Reverse Heart
and
Disease.
Reverse Heart Disease by Caldwell Esselstyn Jr. The book I showed was called The Hungry Brain. And it's by Stephen Guyanet. And
Okay,
this is about neuroscience. Oops, sorry about that. This is about the neuroscience that drives hunger. And it is fascinating to me. Of course, I find the brain to be very fascinating anyway.
Right, right. So the last thing I want to do is ask one of our hosts to share your website in the chat. So if the participants want to reach out to you.
It's Jimmy Conway, MD.
Okay. Okay, so we'll share that.
And there's plant-based OKC.com is another website that my wife kind of runs that, but that was the website we used to do all of our health and nutrition stuff. And it's still active.
And I understand you're based in what state are you in?
I practiced in Oklahoma City. I lived in Norman, Oklahoma, which is a suburb. I currently live about half-time in Norman and half-time in Miramar Beach, Florida.
Okay, and does your company provide services online or on Zoom or just in person?
No, I only do online stuff. And it is more of an outreach. I mean, I don't spend a lot of time talking to people across the country on food, so I don't charge for it.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple of months ago, I spent 5 hours one night talking to a guy who had seen one of the plant-based colleagues and had lost so much weight, he was becoming concerned, and the person had no concern about his loss of weight. And so I spent 5 hours telling him how to gain weight on a plant-based diet.
Okay. Well,
So
that's
losing
wonderful.
too much weight can be a problem.
Right, right. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us and being with us today and for this wonderful presentation. We're about to end here, and I just wanted to not only do a shout out to Gary again and our committee members who got the word out, and the participants who attended.
Gary. He got to
Right.
experience what I practiced, unfortunately.
Right, right. And we wish him a speedy recovery. Also, we have put our California Lawyers Health and Wellness Committee website in the chat for everyone to check it out for upcoming webinars and seminars. I know that March is our yoga month, and we will have some really great webinars on yoga. And if you want to reach out to us, please go ahead and email the committee members, and hope to see everybody next month. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.